Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. As we always do, we're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. There are episodes of Politically Basic that I get extra excited for, and this is one of them. Having worked in the worlds of politics and media for so many years, I think we're up to 17 now, I've had the joy and blessing of making a lot of wonderful connections and friendships with others in these industries, and quite often I get to interview those friends, and today is one of those days. I'm so glad to have my friend and candidate for local political office, Alexander Stoeber, on the show. His story's unique and one very worth hearing. As a child, Alexander experienced homelessness and the many challenges that accompany it, but God used it all for good. After moving to Santa Barbara to study political science at UCSB, Alexander's now a success in the real estate industry and running as an independent for city council in one of California's most beautiful and bluest cities. With a focus on affordable housing, sharp insights into the very issues plaguing renters and homeowners, and a heart to house his fellow Santa Barbarans, Alexander is in a great position to win this race and bring much-needed housing, hope, and help to his community. Alexander, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on with me today.
Hello, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, you and I have no shortage of things to talk about for a number of reasons. One, we're friends and we know each other. But two, we are both very well versed in California's 24th district, which encompasses most of Santa Barbara County. So we're going to get to all of that, all of the issues specific to this area, which is so beautiful and so wonderful, but it's really plagued with a lot of challenges. But your story is so fascinating, so I want to start there if you're up for it. Can you tell my viewers just a little bit about you and your background, especially with experiencing homelessness?
Sure, yeah. So, hello, everyone. As Kyle mentioned, my name's Alexander Stoeber, and throughout my life, I've experienced homelessness in multiple ways. I mean, there's homelessness that you can experience by actually living in a tent. You can be sleeping on your friend's floor. You can be sharing a house with multiple families. And just finding shelter. And shelter is essential for life. We need it for a foundation to live. And in my shelter, oftentimes was by a lake. And we lived in a tent with my mom and my sister. And we felt, the cold of the winds. And we felt all of the environmental conditions that come with that. And it wasn't because that I could not get out of homelessness. So it was not that I was a have-not, although I was, but there was no will for my mom to really be supplying housing because she wanted the thrill of a nomadic life and she wanted to be addicted to drugs, and they're very powerful. But what that meant for me is that I had to focus on getting myself to school in the morning, and really finding independence early on. Since first grade, when I got held back for the first time, because we moved 8 times that year, I was taking myself to school, and what I had to look forward to was structure, warmth, and food. And getting my breakfast in the morning at my school and getting lunches, and sometimes even stealing my friends' lunches to pack away for dinner, was a part of my condition. That's how I lived, and that's how I survived. And one time my teacher told me that the best way for me to get out of the situation I was in was to focus on my schooling, focus on education, and not allow my condition to define who I am. That resulted in many movements, many moves from one dwelling place to another. But what it really resulted in was me getting straight A's all throughout college, all throughout high school, and then going to college for the first time to come to UC Santa Barbara to study political science with an emphasis in American government. And that got me really into leadership and excitement about actually having an impact and using my story to produce an impact in the world around me, and use my perspective to reach people where they're at and understand that everyone's going through their own struggle, and having that level of empathy of also going through struggle to then propel me into real estate, which is such an exciting industry because I get to see people in their most vulnerable and at their most excited. And that has really fueled me in getting involved in the community, learning about permitting and planning and all the boring stuff that no one wants to talk about, but it really moves the needle when it comes to supply and when it comes to demand in this area. And I think that there's a clear path for us to find our future together.
Well, I love that. And, your story, it's just heartbreaking and it's tough because when people know you and know how wonderful you are, of course, we don't want anyone we care about to have gone through something like that. But you're certainly a survivor, a fighter. You have that instilled in you to accomplish your goals and to do better. I know that you've also continued to really just take beautiful care of your mom. How's she doing?
Yeah, so that's actually probably the brightest part about this is that um, those who are have-nots don't always have to remain without resources. Can-nots are much more difficult because they need medical attention and help, but the will-nots can change their will. They have the ability to choose, and what my mom chose when she went to prison for a second time, she had a choice to either continue after she got out, to continue to live the lifestyle that got her there, or to spend her life with her kids and her grandkids. And now she's been sober for 20 years after 30 years of addiction. So if you do the math, she's 66. That's like most of her life she was dealing with this, even since she was 14. And then she miraculously went to prison and she just was still. She allowed herself to heal and to look at the future and look at what she wanted to build rather than what her past was like and just continuing that loop. Now she's doing awesome. She just retired, just officially retired. She lives in Nebraska and she just started a clothing business in her retirement so that she can go around and be involved in the community and just continue to leave something behind, leave her legacy behind. And I think that was probably the biggest turning point in her situation to become the loving mother that she is now. And, seeing her clear eyes and seeing how different it is. People come to me all the time and say, it is a miracle that your mom is alive. And it's true. And it's not a miracle as much as it is her changing her mind. And so many people that we see downtown on State Street in my district, they don't always need a handout. Sometimes they just need a hand up.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to your mom. You're just a wonderful son, and I know you've helped and inspired her so much to get on that path just to be clean and healthy and finish well, right? Those last decades of life to really turn things around. It's so inspirational. So thank you for updating us on that. There's a lot to be said for someone running for political office who has personally experienced a lot of these issues. I think in many ways it's why a Spencer Pratt type candidate really resonates with voters. He lost his home, it burned down, and now he's running to lead the city of Los Angeles so that doesn't happen again. You've had touch points and personal experiences, deep, long-lasting personal experiences with so many of these issues. And I think it's important that people hear from you, Alexander, because we talk a lot about the homelessness issue as a political issue, especially here in California, particularly in communities like Los Angeles. You can drive down there and really see the dichotomy of the visuals, right? You're in Beverly Hills and it's beautiful. You see Bel Air, you're, driving around these gorgeous areas, and then you'll see just an entire street that's full of tents, and it's a tent city. You can literally turn from one street to the next, and it's right there. And I think that we get homelessness wrong quite often, that we think that that's the only form of it. So let's talk about how it's happening and how people are experiencing homelessness here, especially in Santa Barbara, because again, you have a very affluent, a very beautiful community, people with a lot of wealth. You can go down on State Street and see nice looking parts, and go to Montecito and on Coast Village Road, and it's gorgeous. And we do have it still happening here. So why don't you educate us a little bit on really what the state of the city is in terms of the homelessness issue here?
Sure. And thank you for that, Kyle. I see myself as a bridge. We have so much wealth in Santa Barbara, and we also have so much poverty. I mean, we have one of the highest levels of child poverty in the country per GDP. There's a wide wealth disparity, and I've helped clients buy incredibly immaculate, beautiful homes, and I've also helped people buy manufactured homes. And the process is all the same. It's just where they're at. And where we're currently at in Santa Barbara is that we have 1% homelessness. 1% of people, one in every 100 people you see is going to be homeless. And it's not always reported, of course. There's people who are transient moving through Santa Barbara or just stopping to, stand on the corner on the freeway and either ask for money or maybe they're asking for a ride somewhere. But what you can see in Santa Barbara is that 1,000 people are homeless, and at the SP Rescue Mission, if you drive down Calles Chavez, you'll see that people are out there,
Hmm.
and they just need a direction. They're drifting. They're currently sometimes just down on their luck. Maybe there is a woman who fell behind on one bill, and then it snowballed into five, and then it snowballed into missing rent 1 month, and then she got evicted, and now she's just in a hole. The gap got so wide that she fell into it, and she needs a ladder out. That's one type of homelessness.
Hmm.
The next type of homelessness is the person who became so encapsulated by a substance or an addiction. I mean, it's not just drugs here. It can be rumination, can be an addiction. Just staying inside your own brain, paranoia. There's so many reasons that people may not go outside their house and become agoraphobic, and that leads to just rumination and stagnation, and then they actually fall into the have-not category as well. My mom, for example, she just loved partying. She loved the sauce, and she just fell into that have-not category. But it doesn't keep you there. I didn't have to stay there. I was not a will not. Those people are the will nots that won't change their ways. And then there's the can nots. So the people who need psychiatric help, we do have the PUF program, which is psychiatric health facilities in Santa Barbara. And those are 24-hour facilities that people can go into and get care and help. And those are expensive. Those probably should not be used for the have-nots and the will-nots. We have drug disorder programs here in Santa Barbara. We have the puzzle pieces. We just need execution.
Is that the problem? Is that city leadership or whoever is responsible for getting people out of a homelessness situation and into a mental health help or into a rehabilitation or a drug program or an alcoholism program, they're not doing it? What's the breakdown in the process here that's not getting people the help that they need?
I'll be frank with you, Kyle. The breakdown is that we use this label homeless to address three different types of situations, and we try to fund it as if it's one problem.
Yeah. No, I've spoken frequently about this. I served on our community's continuum of care board for just one term, which is 2 years. I remember going to sit on it. I've done a lot of community work, and I saw and recognized other people who were leaders in community service and helping the community. When I walked into that room, I will never forget, I think it was the woman who was running domestic violence solutions. She's like, "Oh, you're here? You're going to want to blow your brains out." I was like, "Nice to see you." She's like, "You're going to hate this committee." And I was like, "Well, look, it's 2 years. I care about this issue." Continuum of care is really digging into the data. It's very different from what you experienced, of course, but it's looking at the numbers and how do you go about understanding the problem really at the root and then getting yourself from A to Z to how we move people through the available resources, right? And to get them through the issue and out to the other side. And I did want to blow my brains out. I'm not going to lie. It was miserable because there was such frustration that you're wading through all this data and all these numbers. And you needed a million different solutions tailored to every single one of these cases. Just like you're saying, it's the single mom with 4 kids who isn't getting the child support and misses a couple bills and gets evicted. And it's the person who we like to call chronically homeless. I don't know if you agree with that terminology, but they just don't, you're calling them the will nots, I think. They just don't have any motivation to get themselves into a different scenario. And when you have so many people who need specific help, it's almost as if every person experiencing homelessness needs a caseworker. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think there's some merit to taking all of this money, these billions of dollars that the state is spending, and giving homeless people a caseworker to help them move through the system?
I think a caseworker would be great. I think based on my experience, when my mom was needing to get Section 8 housing or Medi-Cal, Medicare, welfare, where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
When she's in a lifestyle that she wants, she will keep doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and she was good at doing that. You know, um, I saw, I could tell you all the workarounds, like how to like keep getting welfare, how to keep
Yeah.
getting state assistance. And that case manager would probably also feel a similar way that you did in that meeting.
Yeah.
But they do need compassion. They do, have um, the desire. I think a lot of them just need a light,
Mm.
something to look forward to, and that just to talk to someone and feel seen. I think that that alone would be worth the caseworker. I think that they would be a a lighthouse
Mm.
shining on the shore for people rather than feeling like they need to go out and save sinking ships.
Mm-hmm.
If it's that they need to go and pursue these people and they need to be in contact with them, then they're going to burn out really quick.
Yeah.
But if they stand as a resource on the shore and allow these people to come to them for the resources, then I think that it will definitely turn things around because they have the will to get their fix. They have their will to, continue to travel and seek novelty. I've talked to people who came, into my church, for example, and there's one guy who said, "Yeah, I have two houses out of state. It's just snowy and rainy there. So I come here and I live at the shelter." It's like, what? Why? But that's a real story. That's a
Mm.
true
Mm.
situation. And it's not common. Like that's such
Yeah.
a one-off, but it's kind of illustrative. If you go up to Shoreline Park, I walked up to Shoreline Park with
Mm-hmm.
my mom one time when she was visiting here, and we went to this like picnic table, and this guy was just sitting out there, just kind of like creating like these copper jewelry. And I was
Mm.
like, yeah, so yeah, I see your pack there. Like, are you like living at the shelter or like what's going on? He's like, no, I'm nomadic. I like sleeping under the stars.
Yeah. People
Will not.
do.
Will not.
People do. There was I want to say a Supreme Court ruling that had to do with people sleeping outside. And I remember it because one of the more liberal justices was saying, it's a right. You have a right to sleep outside if you want, which is in conflict with the way you run a city, right? And manage a city where people have to, follow certain rules and coexist together. And it was so interesting. It's almost a really fine line you have to walk here in allowing people their freedom to live their life as they please when it comes to being sheltered.
Hmm.
And also making sure that a society works together in a safe way. And you have to have some guidelines and some rules and some laws applied there. But it's just so interesting. It's such an interesting issue because it's complex. And I think that current political leadership has decided they're going to try to blanket solve this issue. And you just can't do it, which is why we have it continuing to be such a problem. And I want to get to more of the discussion of the solutions, but I want to talk about Santa Barbara specifically and your campaign here. Share with the audience why you decided to run for office, what that looks like. Give us a little bit of the basics on this city and the position that you're running for.
The basics are, unfortunately, Kyle, I did not want to run. I was not excited about being the district, city council member, District 6 city council member. And I was actually in recruiting mode. I was looking for someone who had a great story, had a lived experience that spoke to what we were going through, someone who maybe felt the struggles of having a small business that was trying to make ends meet and getting off the ground and getting brand awareness in Santa Barbara. I was uh, looking for someone who lives downtown, obviously in my district, who felt similarly about walking down State Street and maybe being flashed in front of children, or maybe feeling a little bit hesitant about walking down empty blocks
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where there's no businesses. And I couldn't find anyone that I saw had that plus leadership experience and an understanding of how to solve the housing problem. And that's what made me really get excited about running for District 6 is that I already read this stuff. I already live and breathe it. I already talk to all my clients about it, what their permitting issues are, what the planning process is going to be like, where there may be developments coming up, what the rules are, how rent control is going right now. They're already asking me these questions repeatedly on phone calls, at events, and in person at open houses. I'm already the resource that people come to for the answers. And I was resisting it for a long time. And finally, I just decided that I have the tools, I have the resources, I have the connections, and I have the will to door knock and to mail and to call and do all the things that are so scary to most people. But I'm literally bred for it. I'm like made for this. That is my career, is to do those things. And that is only part of it. Then it's the governing aspect where you're showing up and listening to people. And I have a background in life coaching where it's all about listening to people and looking at what their dreams are, what their issues are that they're dealing with, and finding solutions to those. I see that Santa Barbara doesn't need just good campaigners. It needs good governance, people who can work together and see the common ground that they have with the people that maybe are on the other side of the 4-7 vote, for example, or a 4-3 vote, for example, out of the 7 people on the city council. And that bridge building is what I do in real estate. It's what I do in my community, and that's what I'll do when I govern.
I feel like I've told you this before, but you are such a perfect fit to run for this position, and you'd be brilliant at it. And you have my full support, but yeah, your full life experience has been leading up to a leadership opportunity just like this. I think you do so much good for the city. Let's talk about the makeup of the city council right now. There are 7 members. How have they done historically? Like, let's say in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, are they doing well? Are they just motoring along? Has it been an epic failure? What grade would you give the Santa Barbara City Council today?
If it was based on effort, I think they deserve a solid B for sure. Execution, I think that they were faced with, quite a few challenges, as all of us are. Um, they're trying to balance out getting expert advice from their city manager. I think Kelly McAdoo is doing a great job. I just met with her yesterday. They have guardrails with John Doimus, the city attorney. I think that they have the right level of support to do what they want, but I, kind of asked Kelly McAdoo what makes a good city council member and who's not doing it well and who is doing well. And she's like, obviously I can't tell you like the people,
Darn.
but I'll tell you what I really love and appreciate is when I do briefings on policies, the person's on time, shows up, has already read the documents, done their homework, and is ready to ask questions rather than being told or educated on what the topic is.
Yeah.
And that, she said, was would make the city council more efficient, make her job easier, obviously. And that's obviously paraphrased. So Kelly McAdoo, if you're watching this, I hope I did your phrasing justice. But I think it's common sense. I think that sometimes we step in, our city council members have stepped into their personal agenda rather than what's best for everyone. I think that is indicative or illustrated by rent control. I've been told by a city council member that they don't believe that if it went to a vote by the people, that it would be a popular bill or popular policy. And that's why they decided they want to make the decision on their own. But I do think the unanimous decision to turn Macy's into Yardi, let Yardi come in and develop Macy's and turn it into, an office for 600 people, that will definitely, I think, be a positive for downtown State Street to fill those big empty boxes. I think Nordstrom's has taken way too long to come up with an idea around. I talked to multiple land use planners and commercial real estate developers, and they think it's fascinating, possibly frustrating, how long it's taken to just come up, approve a design, or at least give specific details about what the planning commission or the city council is looking for in Nordstrom, and no matter what, it's going to take a long time to develop that. But I think it's sat way too long. I think this is definitely a dropped ball here. And it's hurt State Street. It's hurt the small businesses down there that were relying on retail. And it's been since COVID. It's been since 2021 that we've experienced this. And maybe retail is already going downhill, but I would have loved to go window shop at Nordstrom's or whatever in the meantime. And then we see that the culture shifting, Restoration Hardware moved off of State Street to Montecito. People have told me that, oh, that's because the rents are too high, or the property owners are not compromising on, the rents and stuff. But it's not true. I mean, the Restoration Hardware, it was paying $350 per square foot, and now it's paying $12.50 per square foot in Montecito, which did turn out great. I mean,
it's fabulous.
I think it's awesome.
I hated it so much.
Yeah.
When RH and the restaurant came to Montecito, because we're very much a small community, and we don't like seeing LA come into Santa Barbara and come into Montecito. So I think several people boycotted. I may have been one of those people. It's like, no, I don't like it. I'm absolutely not going to go there. And then of course you go there and you're like, well, it's pretty amazing. But I think for the sake of catching everyone up, if you don't live here, Santa Barbara's small. It's about 100,000 people. Then you have Montecito to the south, Goleta, which is growing to the north. And it all smushes together into this sort of bigger, beautiful community, and huge tourist destination, and very dependent on those tourism dollars and tourism taxes. And what's happened, as you're saying, since 2020, and really it was leading up to that. I mean, State Street started to lose a lot of businesses that you would call anchors. You're talking about Nordstrom. That was a massive one. We used to have a Saks Fifth Avenue on State Street. There were beautiful stores. Way back in the day, there was an I. Magnins on Upper State. You're too young to know what an I. Magnins is, but it was kind of like a Bendel's or a Barney's, but not the most beautiful boutique department store you could ever imagine. And State Street was thriving in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was full, and you could still drive on State Street, and it was just really bustling. Montecito doing really well too. Yes, 2020 affected it, but we did start seeing some of those LA building owners come in and jack up the rates. And a long, long time ago, there had been some redevelopment on State Street in which a lot of the building owners had signed 20, 30-year leases at great rates. And so, people were cranking. It was going. And then those leases came up and they couldn't afford to stay. And we started seeing those spaces just become empty, businesses shutter, move away, and we were getting the big boxes. And it's interesting to see, when the only department store you have in a town like Santa Barbara is a Macy's, and you go into it and it looks like it's just been robbed and ransacked every time. Kid you not, it looks like it just got robbed. It's tough. It's tough for people to want to go put their dollars into the local economy. And so at the city council level and just any city administration, this has been a discussion. I mean, Alexander, a family of sloths could come to a decision about State Street and some of these building projects faster than the current city leadership. So we need you in there, because it's just going on endlessly, and it's become a real problem for people who live in Santa Barbara. They're fed up, they're sick of it, no one can agree, and nothing's happening. Meanwhile, it's just they're bleeding additional businesses, restaurants, retail, a lot of them family-owned, as you're saying. So for people who don't live here, that's kind of the state of the city of what's going on economically, and it's very expensive to live there also. So you have sort of this kind of perfect storm of economic challenges, and housing and rents have a lot to do with it. So I'd love to hear your plan, your solutions on the economic redevelopment, affordability, and also housing. Go.
Yeah. Great.
That was a lot. Loaded question.
Thank you.
Go.
And just to finish, kind of what we were talking about with State Street, Restoration Hardware did move off, and one of their justifications is the culture and the lack of traffic. And right now, downtown we have a lot of e-bikes that are going
Mhm.
down, and now there's a thrift store in that same spot paying a third of the cost per square foot. I think that that is a good illustration of where we're at. So I wish I could say that we have a plan. On Pearl Street, in Colorado, their plan to create Pearl Street was one, make the plan. Two, get buy-in. Three, get the budget. Four, close the street. We did the opposite. we we closed the street,
Yeah.
and then we tried to fund it, and then we tried to get buy-in, and now we're making a master plan. That is where we're currently at.
That
If you talk
sounds
to
exactly right.
That's exactly right. So,
Yeah.
if you talk to Rick Caruso, one of the most successful real estate developers down in LA, he will tell you that State Street is too wide and that it doesn't feel like you're window shopping when you're
Yeah,
walking down the
yeah.
middle of it. And right now, there aren't enough windows to shop. What you were talking about with Nordstrom's at the top of State Street, sorry, Macy's at the top of State
Hmm.
Street on the Cumberry Plaza, millions of dollars went into developing that, and we had Sears right next to it. Now Sears is a giant empty box, and they are working on developing 1,000 units in there, which is like 90% of the total pipeline for housing in the next 5 years,
Ugh.
possibly 7 years. So there's not a whole lot of other
Yeah.
developments that are getting pushed along because our planning commission is very concerned about conservation of our culture, of our architecture. We want to do it in the best way possible. They're spending a lot of time planning. Well, planning can get you in a hole. I was talking about rumination before. It's an addiction. If you keep talking about the idea and you never actually get any data back from trying to initiate the
Hmm.
idea or push it along, then it's going to keep you where you're at. That's where we are right now. We're a little stagnant. If you want to think about the budget for Santa Barbara, our general fund is $250 million a year right now. We have something like 1,100 employees. 46% of our expenses is salary.
Yeah.
Those employees are largely unionized, so they get 3 to 5% increases per year, which means our expenses are going up, but our revenue is not going up that fast. That general budget is made up of 26% property taxes, 20% TOT, which is transient occupancy tax, which is essentially our hospitality industry, and the rest is like fees, our enterprises, or like the harbor, the airport, things like that. So what we're currently looking at is that if we keep relying on hospitality to be our main resource for revenue, we are subject to pretty much anything that's going on in the world. We are currently in one of the most roaring economic times ever with our stock market. If we were to go into a recession or worse, who knows what would happen to hospitality? And we are banking on that with 20% of our total revenue, which leaves us very vulnerable. The bright spot about all of this, I'll talk about the bright stuff, is that our real estate market has been very strong. So
Hmm.
our property taxes are continuing to increase as homes have new owners, they're remodeled, they're reassessed, and our property taxes continue to go up, which is great. The also one of a few of the big opportunities in our economic development is that we just got an economic development director, our deputy city administrator, which we did not have before, which is kind of wild to me that we didn't have anyone that was trying to bring in new businesses.
Yeah.
Goleta has been great with this. They just got Google,
Hmm.
quantum AI. It's been a while. Obviously, it's not just, but in relatively, they got Google to come in. They're investing in infrastructure. UCSB just dropped $30 million
Hmm.
on the Oasis, which is going to be an incubator for new businesses. SpaceX IPO. With that, we have more manufacturing that is going to start popping up. We have a Nobel laureate that has blue light lasers. So there's like a high tech focus right now. It's called Techtopia, is the state of the city right now, is what we're focusing on, is really driving more tech companies to want to come here and to want to build. And right now we're largely focused on the small businesses on State Street getting filled. We
Hmm.
need infrastructure, we need culture, we need stormwater infrastructure as well, and all this stuff is really expensive. The Probably the biggest threat to that is rent control. So with rent control, 26% of our revenue comes from property taxes. If those property values fall because they're no longer maintained, if they're no longer kept up, if the condition goes down, and maybe the owner falls behind on property tax, now we start to see a real issue with the quality of life in Santa Barbara, the perception of Santa Barbara. Our brand is that we are beautiful. We have tons of natural resources, especially our coastline. We have one of the biggest fisheries in the state, huge part of our economy. We have beautiful outdoors, and right now, I mean, we need to make sure that we're investing in that stuff. And I talked to Roy Lee, and he is really all in on the film commission. Bringing people to downtown State Street as a product of film. So having people and directors and producers come up and shoot on State Street or in our mountains or maybe in our oceans, and that bringing tourism to our area. And we already do it with Santa Barbara Film Festival. And I think that would also bring a lot more revenue as well. That's more stable than just hospitality and vacations.
It's a great idea, and I really appreciate you breaking that all down so that people understand kind of the difficulty in reviving the economics here. Explain to everyone what happened with this rent control plan, because it made national news. It was apparently the most aggressive rent control plan in the country, or rent freeze. Can you break that down for us?
Sure, I'll give you the background of why rent control is currently such a hot topic in Santa Barbara. Because in 2018, we had a massive fire with the Thomas Fire, and then we had flooding that created a mudslide that wiped out large swaths of Montecito. Insurance companies now see Santa Barbara as a high fire area. Essentially, you're living in a fire region. And we don't have mitigation. The fire department is working very hard. The county fire is working very hard. They don't have a ton of staff, but they're doing what they can with the resources they have to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again. What the impact of that is that our insurance companies tripled some people's insurance, drove their monthly payments through the roof, and that monthly insurance was based on new property values because we had such a skyrocketing housing market, with people going to work from home, moving up from LA, moving from all over the world, because this is the best place in the world. I'll say right here, you can quote me on that. This is the best place to live in the world. And our property values went up, so those property values drove up insurance costs as well, while insurance costs were, tripled in some cases. So homeowners and property owners, rental owners, all of them felt that burden. Well, those property owners, the ones who are renting out their properties to these tenants, they now have to charge higher rents to make up for the insurance because they have to be whole. And the argument, I think, for rent control is that these rental owners have made so much money on the run-up of their property values that they should be, subsidizing rents. But what they kind of miss is that a rental owner is lucky to get 3 to 4% on their money per year owning in Santa Barbara. It's very stable. It's a blue chip rental property in Santa Barbara if you own here. But it's not one that gets this massive cash flow because it's so nice and so many people want to live here. So they think that they should cut into that revenue for the property owners, and I mean city council, unilaterally, like two of them went behind closed doors and put together a bill that was then kind of brought out, and they said they used volunteer attorneys and experts and analysts and all this stuff to bring this bill to the rest of the city council, and just kind of expected them to vote on it as a rent stabilization practice. And then they froze all rents, so no one can increase their rents if they own a rental property in Santa Barbara. Not no one, but there are, huge swaths of people who can't increase their rents. There are certain restrictions on that. But what that has driven us towards is now the debate on the city council is to control rent right now for the people who currently live here. The issue is that we have such a high amount of students that live downtown that if they move next year, they just allowed the landlord or forced the landlord kind of to protect themselves by raising the rents even more. So it's good for the short term for people who live and are going to be long-term renters, but it's not good for the long term. It would actually drive up that person who's going to
Hmm.
move in. It's going to drive up their cost because that landlord's going to try to protect themselves and decrease the future conditions
Hmm.
of these rentals.
Yeah, it's an interesting predicament because people who don't live here, people who have never owned a rental property and rented to anyone or been an attorney in this space or have expertise as you do, have no idea that this sounds good in theory only. In practice, you constantly have people who are not paying their rent. You're going to court all the time trying to get settlements and work out disputes, and landlords and building owners are constantly losing money because this doesn't always go the way it is ideally supposed to go. So when you then further financially burden and hinder the building owners, the apartment building owners, the homeowners who are renting out, they can't survive it. And so they're going to sell it. They're going to sell it for more. Somebody else is going to come in and do the same thing. So in practice, that just makes it more expensive for everyone. And it doesn't actually end up solving the problem of creating more affordable housing at the end of the day. So what does city councilman Stoeber do to solve this issue?
Yeah, easy. So easy. Decrease demand, increase supply. That's what I learned in my economics classes and political science. That's what I read about all day when I'm talking about the housing market and why our prices are going up. And right now we have two huge draws on our supply. Uh, the main one is that UCSB's enrollment has gone up astronomically. They continue to increase enrollment. Part of their agreement with Goleta was supposed to be that they increase the housing to match the enrollment. And they had like a 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 6-year plan to be able to match that housing. Well, they even got like $500 million, from Charlie Munger, and they were going to build this Munger Hall, and they're trying to do solutions. They're trying to build for these students,
That was the
but because
megalodorm, right?
the megalodorm, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they
The
literally called it the megalodorm. It was
yeah,
hideous. I mean, the renderings were just this behemoth, massive. It almost looked like a prison
yeah.
style building. And how many students was that one gonna house?
It
Thousands,
was supposed to
right?
be like 1,000 people or
Oh, it
something.
was it was a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Again,
a
kind
thousand
of a
people with
blanket solution of like, let's just pop up a massive, hideous looking building and check that box, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
pack
no
a bunch of
ventilation.
UCSB students in it. What? Who thought that was gonna go well?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was during, after a huge COVID scare too that they came up with this. And they're like, yeah, so it's all going to be HVAC,
Yeah.
no natural ventilation, only windows on the outside. We're like, yeah, I feel like we've seen why this could go
Yeah.
wrong already.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of sick students in a residence hall, and I was actually the president of my residence hall at Santa Catalina, used to be Francisco Torres at UCSB. So I've seen how that could work and what budgets they're working with. But I would say that that was the main issue. That's one of the main issues that we have right now is that students are being pushed from increasing enrollment at City College and at UCSB into Santa Barbara, which is then bringing people. I love them. I was one of them that went to UCSB and didn't pay taxes and only had a job at UCSB. Wasn't exactly like an informed voter that was downtown, not a local, and then it became a local. So I do like that there is that pipeline, and we do need it for high tech, and it's part of our culture. But I do think that decreasing that demand for student housing downtown and putting it in Isla Vista or in Goleta makes a lot more sense. They just have more land. Goleta just has more land to be able to use. So that's one. Working with, I've talked to Greg Hart. I've talked to multiple other people about how we make something like that happen, where we hold UCSB accountable and that accountability puts pressure on them that they take the draw off of demand downtown. And then the second is that we are kind of in a fight with short-term rental owners right now because they are, they're a draw on Santa Barbara. For Santa Barbara, people want to come here, and I just had a bachelor party last month for one of my best friends. I'm the best man, and I planned it obviously in Santa Barbara because it's the best. And we, got an Airbnb outside, and it was in the coastal zone, but I think right now we have a lot of vacant properties, tons of vacant properties in Santa Barbara. And what the city council has talked about is a vacancy tax, which was quickly misdirected, and they walked away from that because they saw how hard it would be to enforce and be punitive towards property owners who have, second homes, third homes, maybe, or maybe they just haven't renovated it, or someone passed away. They were talking about a vacancy tax. Well, if we encourage and incentivize these people to open that up to the market and don't feel like they're going to put someone in who's going to be a nightmare and they can never get them out, or they'll never be able to pay for the maintenance of the property, then we actually have additional supply. So we need to increase supply while we decrease the demand of housing. Obviously, ADUs take way too long. I have this policy that I want to enact, which is the Clear Path Fast Pass. I love Disneyland.
Yeah, Fast Pass and ADU permit.
The Fast Pass
sounds
and
amazing.
ADU permit. You pay some fee that is reachable by everyone. It's not just for the rich people who can afford it, but anyone who is going to put meaningful money into making a good ADU has a checklist of things that they have to hit. Templates. We already have created templates in our city for what you can do for an ADU. Obviously, my opinion, I don't like them. I don't think that they match the style of Santa Barbara. But a Fast Pass, at least, you can pay a fee that now enables you to use a software that's sponsored by the city, or an AI that will go through and check your permit, your application, and be able to move you along a lot faster. Right now, it takes like 6 months just to get an approval, and thousands of dollars that people have to go through before they even know if they can build. And there are plenty of lots that have 1,000 square feet that you could build additional ADUs, additional units on. I think that the city council's focused a lot on adaptive reuse, which is essentially turning commercial property and retail space and office space downtown on State Street into housing. But the problem is that all these buildings are squares, so you're going to have another issue, just a smaller version of the megalodorm, where there's
and
just
a
darkness
traffic
in the middle, you don't have enough.
Sure.
Right. And traffic
Yeah,
problem.
I mean, a lot of people are upset over that Sears building being turned into all of those housing units. The traffic patterns can't handle it. It has an outward ripple effect on the entire town when you start packing a bunch of people into these very dense living spaces. Question about the ADUs before we move on here. Why is it that if I own a piece of property here in California, I can't pop up another structure on my own property? Why does the city have to tell me what I can and cannot do with nailing some boards of wood together and sticking a little potty in there? Even if I'm not renting it out to anyone, if I just want another accessory dwelling unit on my property, why can't I just do it?
Oh, because our city wants a piece of all of your money, and they want your fees,
And I pay
they want a
taxes. I
say.
pay property taxes.
Yeah.
I'm already
but
paying
that's
all
not
the
enough.
things. My
You're
property.
paying all the things. So our planning commission, they take a lot of pride, and our permitting department don't take as much pride. It's like we have the DMV, and that's actually not fair. Our permitting department and commission are doing their best to make sure that they maintain the culture of Santa Barbara. I do have one investor I talked to. He purchased a $3 million property that he wanted to overhaul, do a renovation on, put it back on the market. Well, he puts his application in. The person emails him back after 2 weeks, says, "Hey, I'm going on vacation. I'll get to this in 60 days." And he just has like $150,000 in housing costs, or in carrying costs, before he even gets an answer on if he can move forward with the permit, before he does all the work. That $150,000 is just one example of another opportunity that we could have being poured into our downtown, into more local vendors, into local businesses, and to invigorate our economy. It's just the most expensive part about Santa Barbara is the bureaucracy
Mm-hmm.
and how long the processes take. And it's just because our our city was built, on like 50s infrastructure that we haven't overhauled.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have software to go and find who's illegally renting out Airbnbs, but we don't have software that's, pushing along the permitting and pushing along the planning process and making at least the checkers more efficient.
Yeah, it's starting to feel pretty overly authoritarian. You don't want to embitter your community members and be so angry at the city that you no longer have any of the freedoms that we enjoy just being Americans and living in this country. People work
Hmm.
their whole lives to come to a community like Santa Barbara. They scrape and they save, or they sacrifice a lot to be in a place like that. And when you feel like city leadership's fingers are in your business and eyes are on everything that you do, that's not why you come here. If you want Big Brother in your business, you go live in a high rise in Manhattan. Like, if you want everyone to hear what you're doing and know what you're doing, but you don't come to Santa Barbara, you don't move to a neighborhood where you have a little bit of space and a little bit of land. And I think that generally people want to be respected as property owners, as homeowners, and be left to do with their property what they want. And we've almost gotten so far, so deep into this expectation that we have to ask, Mother, may I, for anything that we want to do, that we think it's normal. It's not normal. And I'd love to see it swing back. I'd love to see
Hmm.
people being respected to make their own autonomous decisions on their properties. While I've got you for a few more minutes, Alexander, we're so excited about your campaign, that you're making this announcement, that you're doing this. You're running as an independent. It's a very left-leaning, heavily Democrat aligning city, and you're running as an independent. Give us your pitch for your campaign. What are you going to do as a city councilman for the city of Santa Barbara?
Thank you. Yeah, so as a city council member in Santa Barbara, you can look to me as someone who's focused on local function rather than local politics or labels. I'm here to make it so that the healthcare workers, the teachers, the firefighters, the police officers, the landscapers, the architects, the people who are building and blossoming Santa Barbara all feel heard and feel represented. Santa Barbara is the place that gave me freedom, the place that I came to and I saw a possibility for my future. It gave me a foundation for me to control my own life and to contribute to the impact of the people around me. And without Santa Barbara, I don't know where I would be. That's why I care about Santa Barbara so much. When I came here in 2011 and I was bright-eyed and I was just living on my friend's couch, I came down here and I saw an opportunity to create something in the most beautiful place in the world. And right now, it feels like we're in a race to the bottom. We're focused on scarcity. We're focused on what we've always tried. And it's a tired, tired plan. We need a new direction. We need to focus on our future here through housing, health, and hope, to focus on how we can make Santa Barbara work for everyone, not just work for the few. And I can be that bridge, the bridge that brings the people who are the have-nots and feel like they're constantly being stepped over into a conversation with those who are wealthy and want to contribute, but don't see any tangible actions that the city council is currently putting into place to move the needle forward. I don't believe in identity politics. I've been independent my whole life. I've seen what it looks like to be dependent on one person's whims and wishes. And I am not attached to either party because I believe that I should be in the middle of the two. I think I should be somewhere that the majority of people can see me as a person who's listening to them, not from my own agenda, but for what they're actually going through. And being heard early in my life is what turned my life around, being heard by my teachers, being heard by the people around me. And that's what our community needs, is to be heard, but also we need execution. We need to
Mm-hmm.
have this city function. I walk down the streets and they're all dark. of course it's going to be, scarier for women to walk alone, down dark streets. Of course it's going to be difficult for people who are unhoused to be sitting out and begging for scraps because they are not getting the specific need that they want. And I think that the small business owners who want to make Santa Barbara work and want to make an impact with their passion in Santa Barbara need to feel like they can get permitting faster. They need to feel like they have support from economic development from the city, and it's not just them out there on their own. That we need to really stick together, and I think for us to stick together, we need someone who isn't divisive, who is a unifying bridge between all of our interests.
Well, it's a brilliant campaign, and we are excited for you. The one thing, too, that I want people to know about you, which is the most important thing about you, is that you're a man of deep faith also. How is that going to guide your campaign and how you serve this city?
I'm a man of deep faith. When I was 6 years old, I drowned in a pool and I saw this long-haired, dark figure eclipse the sun and pull me out. It ended up being the manager of the apartment complex that I was in, running across the lawn because she saw me go under, jumped over a fence, and rescued me.
Wow.
I had flatlined for 7 seconds. And when I woke up, I was in the hospital. And that was one of the first times that I can remember seeing my mom's eyes so clear, looking into mine and saying, "You were here for a reason." And I didn't know what that reason was. I wasn't sure what she was talking about, but it really made me focus on faith and start to look into it more and start to have a relationship with God and how people can expect me to be as a leader, even though only 54% of Santa Barbara actually don't believe in God. I don't want people to think that I'm here to convert them or to focus on him, being their guiding light. It's my guiding light. He is who he calms me in my personal life so that I can be professional in my public life.
Well, we thank God for you, and it's very clear that your whole life, He has been preparing you for great work and allowing you those opportunities to struggle, to have challenge, to have difficulty, to have grief, and saving you for this moment, and I am certain many more ahead that will be inspirational to others. So, Alexander, we look forward to seeing what great work you do in Santa Barbara and beyond. I'm glad to know you. I'm so honored to be your friend, and I'm just proud of you that you're doing this. And we're with you. We're with you, friend. So thank you for coming on the show and breaking all this down for us. We learned a lot, and we'll absolutely be tracking with you as you move forward in this campaign. So congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic. We're committed to breaking down the basics so that you get to decide. Be sure to check us out at politicallybasic.com and follow us across all socials at Politically Basic so you don't miss an episode, and we will see you next time.